So is it Gubagoo?
This is Auto Collabs.
Yeah.
That's the best podcast start we've ever had. We're going to roll with that. First of all, it's Gubagoo. I called it, if you ask Brian Pash, it's Gubagoo. I don't know if he's ever been corrected or if he just is like, I say it how I want to say it. But the way
And
I
if you
remember
ask
it,
Ryan, I think it's Gubagoo.
Or Gubagoo.
no, it's not. Here's how you remember it. Ready? You go, Gooba who?
Gubagoo.
There you go.
There it is.
Like
I love it.
Capico.
Gubagoo. It's Gubagoo.
There it is.
You know, that's the Italian pronunciation of Gubagoo is Gubagoo.
Gubagoo.
Oh, this is really starting off on the right foot.
You know what's really fun about Gubagoo is not just their name, but the very first thing I ever remember about Gubagoo is getting socks in the mail from them. I don't know
That's
how
so
I got them,
appropriate.
why I got them, or who I got them from, but they showed up in a yellow folder or whatever, the manila thing, and they were just socks. No note, no nothing else. I was like, huh. That's pretty cool. Huh. And I think my wife still has them to this day because I don't wear long socks.
Well, the little known fact is that the likelihood that you and I, like everything in life, happens in a certain order. And when it happens, right, that affects every other thing that happens after, right? And there's movies about what if we change just one little thing, right? Well, Kyle and I met on a closed Zoom marketing room put on by Drew Delaware, who was at the time the marketing director of Gubagoo. And had he not put that together, we would have not met in the way we met and probably wouldn't be sitting here right now recording this podcast. That's the truth.
And you know, the thing that I've always appreciated about Ryan is you could bump into him, like back to back bump into him in a crowded room. And the minute he sees you, you're the only person that exists.
Yes.
Like I really get that
He's so
sense of
like
like
that.
he's just locked in on you. And that is something that is so hard to come by. And so, you know, excited to sit down and learn from him and see what he's up to on this episode of Auto Collabs. We hope you guys enjoy it.
Ryan, it has been a while since we've had a time to actually sit and have a conversation. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, Kyle, and I'm super excited to sit with you guys and talk about what's happening in the industry. And thanks for having me on.
There's a little known fact that Kyle and I met for the first time in a marketing room that was hosted by, at the time, marketing director Drew Delaware. So Gubagoo has a special place in the history and legacy of Asoto. So we're going to thank you for that and let everybody else know, like, that's where Kyle and I first laid eyes on each other and said, you look just like me.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's super gratifying, I think, to hear that. Even though I had nothing to do with that, I was probably just nodding my head at the, hey, let's run the coffee talks.
Well, here's I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there. As a leader of a company, I think you had a lot to do with it. One, you hired Drew Delaware. Two, you created a culture where things like drawing people together in the industry were natural. And three, I've seen that executed across a lot of things in your company, both in interactions that I had on the dealer side and interactions with just like the people on the industry partner side. Like things like creating a, this was a couple of years ago. Again, Drew was still there, but I can't remember whether it was it Halloween or it was something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where they did,
it was an escape room.
Yes.
Escape room for escaping 2020, the COVID year.
That's right.
It was brilliant.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Wait, what was that? Explain what that was. I know that was back then, but like, let's introduce everyone to the personality of Gubagoo for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks, Kyle, for saying that about the culture. I mean, it's been, important to me and to the leadership of the company to create that kind of culture where we can give people creative room to to do interesting things and so forth. So what we had done here is we really want to be different in our marketing, right? And it's not all about selling your products or saying why you're the biggest, the best. You guys are in marketing, right? Everyone says they're the biggest, the best, the fastest, the most highest converting and all that, right?
Has the best people, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? But how do you create that feeling of inclusion and community that these are people that I identify with, and I believe what they believe in, and everything that Apple's done really well over the years and all the great brands. So we want to really do something fun and different to showcase that in our brand in 2020, which was a really hard year, obviously, because that was the year that we got COVID came and so forth. So our marketing team had this great idea for a New Year's gift to our customers. We're always trying to do a gift to our customers for the holidays, and people do donations and the holiday cards, and we've done all that. But this year we wanted to do something fun, something they could do with their team or their family. And so what we did was we built a virtual escape room that was activated through chat. So through our product. Yes. So creative, genius.
It was unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the premise was you had to escape 2020. If you didn't escape the game, you would be stuck in 2020 forever. And you would go to a URL.
That's a great penalty right there. No one wanted to be stuck in 2020.
Yeah. And so you'd go to a URL, it would be like Gubagoo / escape 2020. Our chat would pop up and you'd be launched into the game. So yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because it came up actually a week ago internally also. And we were looking for it.
Well, what I love is like there was, from just like you kind of said it all, but just this idea of like, okay, there's culture, that culture meets the reality of the time and being honest with like the way that broader culture is recognizing the time and then going, hey, look, we've got this platform that we're telling everybody interacts with people in a conversational way. Let's execute. Let's allow the platform to live and breathe and be a part of our ecosystem. It was like this massive kind of brand play, and even better was for the best part about it for me. And you said like, hey, this could be with your team or with your family. I actually went home and because my team all did it when I was at lunch one day, so they did it, and I was like, I want to participate. So I went home and at that point had a 4 and 6 year old kid in the house, and they were all about it. It was unbelievable. So for me, it was like my team got to do something, my family got to do something. It was really cool. So I appreciate that, and I just want to say that. But I guess so take us back, because you off camera we were just kind of talking about a little bit about like the unique circumstances that kind of created Gubagoo, that was like the circumstances that you walked into that maybe wouldn't have been expected otherwise. Can you take us back through that kind of like that timeline?
Sure. Yeah. And we were talking about how these happenstance events, these coincidences that happen through your life can have these huge impacts for many years, and just the power of that. So to take it way back, my father had been in software since the 1970s. So he was an OG of software. This is when, obviously before the internet, before software was cool.
70s. Right.
Yeah. Late 70s. It was hard to raise money for software even because people didn't understand what it was. And so he met a gentleman named Brad Title, who was the founder of Gubagoo. He met him in a Shoeshine in a Texas airport. I believe it was Dallas, but it might've been Houston. And Brad had a CRM for automotive at the time. He was, automotive his whole career, and he was, it was his first company. And my father ended up becoming, going to business with Brad for that CRM company, which eventually sold to Cobalt, which became CDK and so forth. And then in around 2010 or so, Brad called my father up and said, hey, I've got this idea for this behavioral engagement and scoring and messaging chat product for automotive. I really think there's a need for it. And they got together and Brad started building it, and my father got involved, and that's how I got involved. And so that one event at that Shoeshine affected a decade of my life working and building Gubagoo. So yeah, it was quite remarkable. And it really was born out of this notion that there were some messaging was taking off as a primary communication tool on dealership websites, as well as for lead conversion, which was obviously a huge thing at that time in 2010. I'm driving traffic to my websites. How do I convert them better?
Right.
And Brad had this insight of scoring traffic that had landed on the website and engaging it based on their behavior on the site and changing the greetings and changing the frequency of the greetings. And we developed this algorithm called the Beast scoring algorithm. And
is that still in play? I'm sorry, it is.
It's still in play. I think we're actually working on developing a new generation of it, but it is still in play. So
if someone's been to Kings Island and they're going to call it the Son of the Beast, and then hopefully it doesn't get torn down a few years later.
So right now what we do is if a customer's on a VDP, our greeter is engaging them based on that specific VDP with a message of, referencing the vehicle you're interested in, right? When a customer has been back to the website multiple times, we're showing a more aggressive greeting, things like that right now, but we're going to, I think, take it to the next level over the next while.
Well, so I'd like to kind of think, so Gubagoo 2010, it sounds like, right? There were a couple other chat companies that were like that 07, 08 range really got started. And then, a couple more a few years after. And then there was a gap until like the 2020, 2021, where I saw a couple more chat companies come up. But there's been an obvious evolution over the time. Can you speak to kind of the evolution in the way that dealers have approached chat solutions and the way the chat ecosystem has approached the conversation? Like, what's been a couple of the major inflection points that you've seen in the change in how this industry is approaching chat?
Yeah, for sure. So it definitely first started off with managed chat. That was what everyone wanted. They wanted someone to handle my customers for me. I don't want to talk to my customers as a dealership, I don't believe that I'm capable of doing so. So these companies, in the early days, it was us, Contact at Once, and Active Engage were really the primary players there. And it was, listen, they're going to drive traffic to the website. You guys engage the customers and convert it, send me the lead to my CRM, and then my team will handle it like a traditional internet lead.
Right.
So that was really Gen 1, I think, of messaging. Then there were two other inflection points in the evolution. One was when we brought out the ability for the dealership to get involved in the conversations while we're chatting with the customer. So we would be the front line for messaging with the customer and handling those initial inquiries. Then the idea was for those high value qualified customers that are going deeper in the conversation, your team can jump in and take it from there and go deep with the customer, right?
Yeah.
And so we would sort of act as a filter. I mean, we would convert leads still at a high clip, but we would act as that filter. So if it was a tire kicker who's going to message and drop off, your team doesn't have to worry about that. You can watch the conversations, jump in when the customer wants to talk pricing or they're asking deep questions about vehicles. So that was really the second evolution. Then the third one, I would say, is when digital retailing and virtual retailing really came. And there was this insight that messaging is a core component of buying a car. There's e-commerce now coming out on is now being a core component of automotive dealership websites. Yep. Let's bring those two things together and build a digital retailing platform that has deep messaging integration and deep messaging capabilities. And that's really the third evolution. And I think that's where we are today.
So it seems like proximity to the customer has kind of been like it's dealers realizing that their proximity to the customer can be drawn closer and closer to the user on the other side of the screen, essentially, right? Is kind of what I'm hearing. Do you think that there's like another evolution like on the horizon? Is it a step even closer, or is there actually kind of a pulling back at this point? Which way is at least the dealer user heading in the inner, and is the customer also taking steps to get closer, or are they continuing to pull back to where we have to take steps forward? Like, what's that interaction look like for you on the horizon for us as an industry?
Yeah, I think that we definitely want to bring the customer closer directly to the dealership. I think that we've realized a lot of the early gains, the low-hanging fruit of bringing the customer and the dealer together, to the point where there's a certain number of dealerships that will utilize this model, this hybrid model, or the model of talking to their customers directly and not leaving it to the managed chat company 100%. There is a number there of dealers that are going to do that, and we've seen very little movement in that number over the last while, right? So all the dealers that are progressive, that actually give a damn to talk to their customers, are doing it now. It's now the laggards, the ones who say, I don't have the process, my BDC isn't set up, I don't trust my team, or I just don't care, and just feed me leads and do your job. Those are the ones that we're trying now to bring along into that. But I think that the human element of the dealership helping in a consultative way with customers will not go away. And we're very much pushing toward that. And we want to support whether a customer wants to buy fully online with no help at all, or they want to buy online with guided assistance by talking to someone in the dealership, or they want to build their deal online, then come into the store. We want to support all of that. And I think one of the really important things is that the experience that they have online is the same that they have in the store. So the interface that they're experiencing online matches and is cohesive with that experience in the store also.
What other industries do you see, like when you look for indicators and when you kind of look for like the optimal customer experience? Is there anything that you kind of is your personal go-to that you keep an eye on, say, oh, let me pull a little from this, a little from that?
That's a good question. I think pulling a little from this and a little from that summarizes it well, describes it well. So there's not one industry that we're trying to emulate in its entirety, but we look for
understandable.
We look for great online experiences when we're building. So we're like, well, this is how you check out when you're buying an iPhone, right? So we're looking at the Apple e-commerce experience and the Apple in-store experience, or we're looking at. We're also looking at other ways that people are doing it in automotive, of course, right? A Carvana. And sometimes we don't like what we see there, and sometimes we do. But that's our job, is to look at all of these different transactional
like the Carvanas, the Carvanas, for instance, you know, a lot of people will look at them and talk about the advantage they have because they can custom build from the ground up. And I've looked at it and, you know, kind of I've talked about this, the smart vendors and industry partners we have looking at a much broader base of behaviors and transactions. We think that it's an advantage to have other companies building something that, you know, is applicable in a lot of different use cases, right? Because like Carvana, we feel like Carvana is actually, they're living in their own box. Right. And although there are some advantages to it, we tend to believe, like, you know, folks like yourself they're looking at all these other areas happens to be an advantage because dealers are so different.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing to unpack. You know, I think that there are advantages that Carvana owns sort of their entire stack and gets to do the financing and gets to do the financing and the F&I, and they don't have the OEMs to you know, that complexity to deal with. But at the same time, they only have used vehicles. They don't have new vehicles. they have a lot of problems also, right?
Yeah.
So this stuff is hard.
You're like, Carvana doesn't have to worry about cap cost reduction, though.
Yeah.
In 50 different states,
Right.
Because they're all different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's tough. I think that the dealer groups I've seen doing it really well are able to do that because in some cases they have their own financing or they have their own F&I company that they own. For example, Asbury now owns their own F&I company. Right. So they're able to create these experiences across the entire stack. And ultimately, big problems often require control across your entire stack, right? Because you need to put all these pieces together, integrate things here and there. So yeah, I think the franchise dealers are really well positioned for it, though.
Yeah. So whenever I hear that, I'm like, man, but I started thinking through the other day. I was like, man, there's a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of big groups. And if you look back around it, still only like 9% of our industry is actually consolidated from what I understand. And there's projections for where it's like 15% by, at some like over 10 rooftop groups or something like that. It could be 15% by 2025. Right. Mm-hmm. So like the rest of the 85% are dealing with like not consolidated resources, not having. So,
wow, that's lower than that just sounds.
It sounds low, but think about it, like
because you hear about it so much.
Yeah, but you think about Alithia, they're like what? They just crossed 300. I mean, that's
right.
Out of 17,000. That's not a lot, So like it's big, but it's not like a consolidated marketplace. So you think about that, and like what are you having to tackle as a company, and what are the things that you've found as barriers in the way to supporting some of these like single rooftop or, one or two or three rooftop dealer groups where they don't get the benefit of consolidation or owning the full tech stack or having the leverage to tell CDK to get their data out or they're going to leave them and, they don't really care. Like, what are you having to do as a tech partner for some of those dealers and dealer groups that are more progressive, that are thinking like an Asbury? They just don't have the resources to do that. What does it take for a tech company like yourself in our industry to make the things happen for them that they need to have happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So like talking about these really hard problems requiring solutions across the entire stack, the beauty of where we're at right now is that we have that ecosystem within Reynolds of that entire stack, right? We have a CRM, we have a DMS, we have messaging, we have digital retailing, we have fixed ops. We really have almost everything. And so by having that, we're now able to create experiences for dealership users as well as consumers that are limitless, right? We're not bound or constrained by an API of some company of another company that that it's hard to get in, it's hard to get things done with because they have their own priorities and they're not our company, right? But now because we have a CRM, we can say, you know what, when a customer comes into chat, when we get an identifier for them, like a phone number or an email, why don't we go look them up in CRM and surface all of the data that we find in CRM, like what vehicles they own and how much trade equity is on their vehicles? Why don't we show that to the dealership user in the chat? Why don't we, use that to create an experience for the customer that we wouldn't be able to do with anybody else, right? So I think that and you look outside like we were talking about other industries, I'm looking at Zoom right now, and they've really gone to, a lot of the companies, full solutions, right? It used to start with like, we're trying to solve a specific problem. In the case of Zoom, it was online meetings suck, right? And they're not reliable. So let's fix that. Now they're like, how do we bring chat into the game? How do we bring webinars into the game? How do we make like a full solution, one-stop shop for our set target customer? And that's really where we're going, is to bring that full solution so that dealers don't have that friction across their stack.
Wow. I mean, I love what you're doing, and I think that it is progressive and innovative, and it sounds like a lot of work. Like, I think everyone kind of had that when the acquisition happened, a little over a year ago now. It's like, all right, what are they going to do? Are they going to figure it out? And it sounds like you're well on your way, and I'm sure there's still kinks and things you're working to fix, and appreciate that you have the energy and the intensity, and that you built this culture that says, hey, look, we're always going to have that type of fun. Ryan, really, really appreciate you being on with us today. Can't wait to see you in Philly, and thanks for everything that you do in and through our industry from a tech perspective. So thanks for the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. And thanks, Paul. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And I'm looking forward to the conference and having that energy in person there. So it's going to be great.
I cannot imagine being a technology partner in automotive and going through years and years and years of trying to pull down all these APIs and all these integrations, and then moving into being purchased by a company like Reynolds, and then having the access to all of this data and all of the integrations that now you can tie together and give access to for dealer partners, but still have to like maintain relationships among other industry partners. And I appreciate that. Like, it's not just the culture that they've created, but the technology platform that they've created that is trying to push the boundaries and attempting to move forward with this connected data services in order to create a great customer experience. I'm impressed by both ends of the spectrum that he talked about in that conversation.
You know, not everybody can pull that off. You think about like every company has a lot of clients, legacy companies. There are a whole lot of opinions about them out there, and to be, I think, absorbed into one of them and then still need to maintain the identity that made you great in the first place is not an easy thing to accomplish. And so this is the first conversation, you know, I've had with Ryan since that has happened, and it was kind of encouraging to see like the spirit is alive. You know, that's for me that really hit home.
That's the piece that is so difficult to pull off, to your point. Like, we've seen so many companies rise from like kind of humble beginnings, and then the minute they get a taste of the glory, see what it tastes like. They lose their identity, right?
It's Nacho Libre, by the way.
Yeah, they're little Nacho Libre. You can't see it, but there's some Nacho Libre art on the wall back here.
Fan art, by the way. Cirillo actually made the poster. It's brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't find one that I liked, so I'm just gonna do overachiever, you know. But Ryan, you know, I got to know him in the early days, like when it was this thing, right? That's why I kind of joked in our intro of like, is it Gubagoo or Gubagoo or Capicola? Like, what is it? Because like at that time it was like, no guys, it's Gubagoo. You know what I mean? Like, they were very early educating the market, and so it's inspiring to see that rise, and you know, just I feel glad for them, you know, like that they've been able to kind of ring the bell in that sense. So we hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Ryan Osten at Gubagoo. On behalf of Paul J. Daly, Kyle Mountsier, myself, Michael Cirillo, thanks for joining us here on Auto Collab.
Welcome to Auto Collabs.